Something is off. Not in a dramatic way. Not in a way you could point to if someone asked you to explain it. You are doing what you were supposed to do. The career is moving, or at least moving enough. The people around you care about you. There is food, shelter, a calendar full of things that make sense on paper. And still, and underneath all of it, there is this feeling that refuses to disappear. Not pain, not depression exactly, just a kind of low, persistent static, a sense that you are performing your own life rather than actually living it, that the version of you moving through the days is real but incomplete, that something essential is being left behind in every room you walk into. You have tried to argue yourself out of it. You told yourself you were being dramatic, that gratitude should be enough, that other people manage to feel fine with far less, and for a while the argument holds, until the morning you wake up and realize you have been running on autopilot for months, until the numbness becomes undeniable, until the static becomes something louder. What Carl Jung spent his life studying was precisely this. Not the obvious breakdowns, but the quiet ones. The ones that happen to people who are, by every external measure, succeeding, and who cannot understand why that success feels hollow. His answer was not what most people expect. The problem is not your circumstances. The problem is not your choices, your relationships, your productivity system, or your mindset. The problem is that you have been living out of one small corner of yourself, while an entire interior world waits unvisited, behind doors you forgot existed. By the end of this video, you will understand what that interior world is, how it tries to reach you, and what it costs every single day you refuse to listen. But consider yourself warned, this is not comfortable territory. Because the real revelation is not that your unconscious is trying to speak to you. It has been speaking your entire life. The real question is why you have been so determined not to hear it. Here is a belief so fundamental that almost no one stops to question it. You think you know yourself because you know your own thoughts. Jung was precise about why this is a mistake. What you call your identity, your opinions, your preferences, your principles, the story you tell about who you are, is not the whole of you. It is not even close to the whole of you. It is a thin, conscious layer sitting on top of something vast, ancient, and mostly invisible. Below that layer lives everything that actually drives your behavior. The relationship pattern you repeat even after swearing you would not repeat it. The career you chose because it was safe rather than because it called to you. The anger that erupts sideways aimed at the wrong person at the wrong moment. Because the real source was never named. The hollow ache that surfaces on quiet evenings without any apparent cause. None of this is random. None of it is bad luck or character failure. It is the unconscious, operating continuously whether you are paying attention to it or not. Jung observed something that still has not been fully absorbed by modern psychology. The majority of what drives human behavior is not available to conscious inspection, not because we are broken, but because that is how the psyche is structured. The conscious mind is the instrument you use to navigate the surface of life. But your real values, your genuine desires, the formative wounds that quietly shaped everything, the forces that pull you toward or away from particular choices, those live somewhere the ego cannot reach simply by deciding to look. And here is the cruel irony. The more intelligent you are, the more convincingly you construct explanations for your own behavior. You become skilled at narrating yourself. You build persuasive internal stories. You sound like someone who understands what they are doing and why. Meanwhile, the actual source of your choices continues operating one level deeper, completely untouched by your analysis. Jung wrote that what most people call self-knowledge is really just knowledge of the ego, the social self, the performed self, the self that was assembled under the pressure of approval. And confusing the ego for the whole self is not a small error. It is, as he put it, the central confusion of modern life. You are not the author of your experience as much as you believe. You are, more often than you would like to admit, watching your own life happen and constructing reasons for it after the fact. This is not an insult, it is the starting point, because nothing changes until you stop overestimating how well you already know yourself. If the unconscious is driving so much of your experience, the critical question becomes, does it communicate? Can it be heard? Yes, constantly, but not in the language you were trained to trust. The unconscious does not speak in logic. It does not send clear directives or rational arguments. It communicates in a symbolic register, older than language, older than culture, that most people were never taught to read. And because they were never taught, they spend their lives dismissing its signals as irrelevant noise, Dreams were, for Jung, the most direct expression of this language. Not because they are mystical or prophetic, but because they are honest. When you sleep, the ego's constant monitoring relaxes. The psyche stops performing. And what surfaces, those images, figures, impossible scenarios, carries real meaning, not literal meaning, symbolic meaning. The figure pursuing you through a corridor is not a person. The house with the locked room is not a house. The self doing something in a dream that you would never do while awake is not a malfunction. It is a message. The unconscious drawing your attention towards something you have refused to look at directly. When the same dream recurs, it is not a glitch. It is the same letter being resent, because it has not yet been opened. But dreams are only one channel. There are also what Jung called synchronicities, those moments when an internal state and an external event collide in a way that feels impossibly significant. The book opened to exactly the page you needed. The conversation that answered the question you had not yet spoken. The encounter that arrives precisely when a door is closing somewhere inside you. You have experienced this. You called it coincidence and moved on. Jung would say you left the message unread. Then there are the body signals. The tension that lives in your shoulders regardless of how much you try to release it. The exhaustion that arrives not after hard work, but after spending a full day being someone you are not. The physical contraction in situations that seem on the surface completely fine. The body and the psyche are not separate systems. When the conscious mind refuses to process something, the unconscious often routes it through physical sensation instead, and the body, unlike the ego, does not know how to perform. And finally, there are the impulses you override before they fully form. The sudden irrational pull toward a completely different kind of life. The unnamed longing. The feeling, in the middle of a functioning and acceptable existence, that you are betraying something essential in yourself. Something you could not explain to anyone because it does not live in the realm of logic. Because it lives below logic. Jung's argument was not that you should act on every impulse or treat every dream as a literal instruction. His point was more demanding than that. These signals form a coherent, continuous conversation, and most people have been hanging up the phone every time the call comes through. The unconscious does not warn you once and disappear. It whispers first, then speaks. Then, if the speaking goes unheard, it begins to remove the conditions that made ignoring it possible. Jung observed this pattern across decades of clinical work. The anxiety that once appeared occasionally becomes the thing that wakes you at 3 in the morning. The pattern you kept repeating in relationships does not simply repeat. It intensifies, growing more precise in the way it finds the exact same wound. The vague emptiness that once responded to distraction stops responding entirely. This is not the unconscious punishing you. It is the unconscious doing the only thing available to it, increasing the signal. Depression without a visible cause is often this. Not grief about something specific, but a disconnection from the deeper layer of the self that knows what actually matters, what actually gives life its direction. Anxiety that reason cannot resolve is often the ego sensing it is misaligned with something it cannot name. Burnout is often not the result of doing too much. It is the result of doing too much of the wrong thing, while the right thing waits. The unconscious will protect you from the wrong life, even when the ego has committed fully to building it. But the deepest cost is not suffering. Suffering can be endured. The deepest cost is estrangement. From your own depth, from the sense that your choices actually belong to you, from the experience of a life that feels genuinely inhabited rather than merely managed. Jung was a clinician, not a mystic. The methods he developed for engaging the unconscious are not rituals. They are practices of disciplined, honest attention. Start with your dreams, not as material to be decoded with a fixed symbolic dictionary, but as images to sit with. What part of me does this figure represent? What is this scenario pointing toward that I have been unwilling to face? Practice what Jung called active imagination. Enter a state of relaxed focus. Call forward an emotion you have been avoiding, your grief, your anger, your longing, and hold a genuine conversation with it. Write it down. Let it surprise you. What emerges is almost always the thing you most needed to hear, and most deeply did not want to. Pay attention to what disturbs you in other people. The quality you find intolerable in someone else is almost always a quality you carry and have refused to claim. The thing you idealize in another person is often something you have denied yourself permission to be. The charge, whether repulsion or admiration, it is a map. pointing directly at an unintegrated part of yourself. Listen to your body as information rather than inconvenience. Sit with the tension and ask, what emotion is living here? What truth am I not letting myself feel? And notice the coincidences that feel significant. Not to become superstitious, but to treat them as data rather than noise. None of this requires hours of dedicated practice. What it requires is something simultaneously simpler and far more difficult. The decision to take your inner life seriously, to stop treating dreams as random, to stop calling your intuitions just a feeling, to stop managing your symptoms without asking what they are trying to tell you. Here's what everything in this video has been building toward. You are not broken, you are not failing. You are not unusual for feeling empty while doing everything correctly. You are simply estranged from the part of yourself that knows what you actually need, what actually matters to you, what your life is actually pointing toward. And that estrangement is not permanent. Jung called the process of ending it individuation, not self-improvement, not optimization, something far more demanding and far more real. The gradual integration of everything you are, not only the parts you cultivated for approval, but the depths you buried when the world made clear it had no use for them. It is not an event, it is a direction, a continuous reorientation toward the interior, toward the dreams you stop dismissing, the impulses you stop rationalizing, the symptoms you start asking real questions of. And what Jung found across decades of this work was consistent. When people begin this dialogue in earnest, the emptiness does not vanish, but its character changes. It stops feeling like absence and starts feeling like depth. Choices begin to carry a weight that belongs to you. The sensation of living beside yourself, that persistent quiet wrongness, and begins to ease. Not because the external circumstances transformed, but because you are finally in the right conversation. Your dreams are the most honest thing about you. Your intuitions are intelligence older than your education. Your symptoms are not malfunctions. They are messages from the part of you that refused to be entirely silent. The unconscious has been patient. It has been sending variations of the same message through every available channel your entire life. The only thing left is for you to decide you are ready to finally receive it. If something in this video opened a door, don't rush past it. Write down the dream you keep having. Notice the feeling you keep dismissing. Ask in silence the question you have been too afraid to ask yourself. This channel exists for people who are done mistaking the surface for everything. We'll be here when you're ready.